police chief of the Oro Valley Fire Department, Chief Kara Riley.
You said fire department on the Oro Valley
Oh,
Police
dude, remember
Chief.
I did that last
You
time.
did.
We were at like some sort of event, and I was like, oh, we also have from the Oro
I
Valley
can't
Fire
pass the
Department.
fire test, I promise you.
No, yes, you can. The police chief of the Oro Valley. Police chief of Oro Valley. How about we say that?
Fair.
Because I'm going to say fire department every single
It's okay.
time. Because
we still love you.
And we've kind of grown up together in the both fire and emergency services. And I knew you all the way back when you were a PIO.
Yes,
with
it's been
the
a bit.
department.
Yeah, it's been several years. But yeah, it's been fun.
Well, and I bet all of that training comes in handy now that you know, with having to deal with media and making you comfortable to actually come and join us today.
Sure. Yeah, I tell people who are preparing to be the police chief, the number one position that's prepared me for being the police chief was being the public information officer.
Oh, yeah.
It's invaluable.
Which is why you weren't scared to go live.
No,
either.
not at all.
Because for one, we know each other, but you can also handle yourself on the fly.
I hope so. We're about to find out.
We'll find out. And it's cool because David, our director in the back, he's got Marana Police Department experience, and he's also got a beeper button, so he can censor you if you go on a profanity-laced tirade or something.
I appreciate that.
So first off, one of the reasons I really wanted you as one of the first guests that we had is we've talked before, and I'm so inspired by your background and your upbringing because it was not anything that I thought was actually that you would just assume was a part. So you grew up in Africa.
I did.
And tell us more about that.
So my father, who passed away in December, was he was a professor with the University of Arizona, and his passion was combating the worldwide epidemic of starvation. And so he spent his whole life living and teaching people in third world countries how to grow food with their natural resources. So our journey began in 1969. I was born in 68. So, and my mother and my father and the three girls moved to Abu Dhabi before oil was produced. And so incredibly different than what it is today. It was a island with 3 mobile homes. And by the time he left 3 years later, there's 1 ton of food being shipped out daily to the local people. And what he did was he irrigated the salt water, the ocean inland, took the salt out, and it was in a greenhouse setting. And so from there, we then went to Taiwan, and we spent 6 years in Taiwan in a small town in southern Taiwan called Shanhua. And there are 8 international vegetable centers, and one of them is in Taiwan. And this is where people will ask me, do you speak another language? And the answer is no.
No.
My siblings are much smarter than I am. So I have one that speaks Mandarin and Japanese, and one that speaks Spanish, and then me. Then finally, and probably the most instrumental because I remember it the most, was we then moved to Sudan, Africa. So I lived in Khartoum for 6 years, and my father worked in southern Sudan, so it's split in 2. So you have northern and southern Sudan now. And the northern part of Sudan is Islamic Muslim.
Okay.
And the southern is Christian. And so when I was raised there with my parents, we were under Islamic law. Wow. And so we were very strict in regards to what we could wear, face coverings. My mother was not allowed to drive. We ate second. Very different world until we came back to America when I was 16. And so that was kind of our upbringing. My parents continued on to several other countries with my brother, who's 10 years younger than me. And then they finally came back to the U.S. permanently, probably about maybe they lived another 10 years overseas while I attended U of A and started my law enforcement journey.
Wow. So that, first off, what an amazing life your father led and was willing to bring the kids through all of it for that greater purpose of establishing communities there.
Yeah, and it really is, looking back on the experiences that we had and so instrumental in our world today, in what we deal with today in America. And I give the example of, my the electricity went out, and my daughter was upset, and it was out for like an hour. And I said, well, when it becomes 9 months, I'll worry about what you think.
Yeah.
But since it's only an hour, I think we're good.
I think you'll survive. Not everything's going to spoil.
Yeah, we're going to be fine. So yeah, no running water, no electricity. So I have very few things that I will complain about because I think, we're very blessed.
Right.
And it also really drove my passion to the United States justice system and the Constitution. Because what I saw as a child were atrocities and horrible things that occurred to humans across this world. And so it was something that I realized how fortunate we are here in America. And that kind of led me to this career.
Well, and isn't it, it's got to be so beneficial for you. And I would imagine as you're trying to raise your family, like how do you give them that perspective? Because it's one thing to have the power go out for an hour. But like, I know for me, what really helped is that I just got back from Ecuador. We were talking about that earlier, and we did a missions trip with the Church of the Nazarene, and we went anywhere from the highlands to the Amazon, and it was all about just taking care of the people, whether they needed some medical stuff, whether they needed dentistry. I got a crash course in that. We didn't have hot showers for like 3 days while we were in the Amazon, and it just, but it felt so good at the same time. Because
it's humbling.
Yeah, because you're truly living a life of service.
Yes.
And that's really what getting into the police department is a life of service, right?
Yes.
That's what you're doing. So when you came in to the police department, how did you know this was it for you? Because some people explore, they're not really sure. It's not like your family were officers. So how did you know that?
Well, when I came back to the United States and I obtained my driver's license, which was, pretty exciting time for me.
Especially because you couldn't even have it
where
you came from.
I came back and I remember being a senior at Rincon High School, and I'm like, oh, we get to wear shorts and we get to play sports. This is amazing.
So did you overcorrect, and were you like, oh, I'm going to do all the things that
now, if my mom's listening, I don't know that I want to say everything I did. However, no, I don't think I overcorrected. I think that I then just embraced the culture in regards to sports, especially athleticism, and because we didn't have it.
Right.
And so it was kind of interesting to be able to say, what an opportunity. And so my passion began, with soccer, and I enjoy lacrosse, and I played club lacrosse for University of Arizona, and just really was always busy just because I had all these opportunities. But unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to say it, I got stopped by the police, by the Tucson police for speeding. And at 16.
Pretty early on to having your license.
And really just grilled the police officer of exactly what you do. And I just knew at that moment, that's what I'm going to do.
Really?
It was just the most amazing thing to see the uniform and to know that, when he described it, it's just helping people. And as I grew into my career, I realized that primarily being the voice of victims and some who had no voice any longer really was my passion. And I just decided that was going to be it. I started at the Pima County Jail first.
Oh, wow.
Working in corrections.
Like corrections, yeah.
And enjoyed that immensely. I think that they are really not recognized enough for their hard work and dedication, the corrections officers that work tirelessly every day. It's a very difficult environment, but I also will say it taught me how to communicate with people and really understand respect and compassion. And so that was where I began my journey, and then began working in policing in 1992.
Okay.
So
not right into Oro Valley? Did you start somewhere else?
I started at the airport, but when I was telling your partner that I've been doing this for 32 years, he had this look on his face like, my goodness.
Well, that's because you look so young.
I'm sure that's what he was thinking. I'm positive, yeah. So, I started with the airport police, and I loved working at the airport, being the welcoming ambassador to this community that I love so much. And so it was really fun working there. But obviously after 9/11, policing changed, and I also became a mom.
Oh,
so
at the same time?
Yeah, at the airport police, they rotated every month.
Okay.
And I couldn't continue to really try to be the best mom I could by also working shift work that rotated every month. And so I remember taking a call for service as the detective and writing notes down, and I just said I couldn't do it anymore with the shifts. It was too much. And just being in the room with my daughter as I was taking notes. And so I then called the police chief at the time, Danny Sharp, who had been my instructor at the police academy in 1992. And he really had a passion for the profession as well. And so it really drew me to recognizing him as a leader and looking at Oro Valley to transfer to. And they also rotated every 6 months. So that was going to be a better shift. I was a sergeant already at the airport. And so I took a very large pay cut to come to Oro Valley. But my priority has been and always will be is my family. Yeah. And so that's when I ended up lateraling to Oro Valley. And I'm actually coming up on 20 years in Oro Valley in June.
Wow. Congratulations. Yeah, that is. So, and that means, I heard something. Were we going into a, no, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I thought that was a moment that we needed an applause for the 20-year.
Oh, yeah. We just got a different
pushed the
one.
wrong button. So.
Yeah, well, that's
it's okay.
live.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Yes. And so Chief Sharp was there then for your whole entire career.
Yes.
How was he as a mentor and a developer of culture? Because obviously culture is important. And Oro Valley, I'm sure, had some challenges early on competing with other departments for wages and benefits and some of that. So,
yeah, I think that may be the case. I certainly think it's even more now, which we could talk about in regards to the challenges of hiring. But I will say, great leader, great mentor that I was able to watch for 17 years. And then he retired in 2020. I'm convinced that he has the ability to see the future because 3 weeks after I took over, the pandemic started.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, what luck is this?
Good luck with that.
But anyway, so yes. But I will give a plug that I worked a lot with his wife, who is a legend police retired sergeant out of the Tucson police. And
really?
So I always tell people he's good, she's just better. And he knows I say that, so it's okay.
Well, I think that's for most of us guys. It's if we're successful at all, there's probably somebody that has propped us up along the way. So
yeah, she's been a great mentor as well along the way, and certainly enjoyed my time learning from both of them. And then stepped into the role in February of 2020 as the police chief. So it was.
But you had to go through quite a process, if I remember.
We did.
Because we were, I think we had some assumptions over on the fire side that it was just going to be like, well, you got a couple great internal candidates.
Absolutely.
You could make it pretty easy and just go through it. But they did a whole nationwide search, right?
They did. Yes. It was
so
decided.
You had to take down a lot of bosses that are coming in from outside.
I don't know if it was a takedown, but it was more, when I decided that I was going to test, and I remember it being in August of 2019 that it was decided they were going to do a national search, and I was fine with either way because I focused on one thing, which was representing the men and women that I've worked with at that time, for 17 years, and realized that passion is what had to drive me and representing our community. And so the test began in November of 2019. It finished in January of 2020. And they announced my position then in February.
Maybe a couple days before the entire country was locked down.
Yes. Yes. I had 3 weeks of celebration, and then it went away.
Yeah. Well, and we worked together through a lot of that too, because, excuse me, I was doing the ops chief stuff, and we were trying to figure out at the time, like, how can we still reach the community and reach our people? So we learned early on that you're awesome with, we don't want to have you memorize stuff when you're trying to send messages, like, because you're great in the flow and just being able to talk. And when we were trying to give specific messages, we're like, how do we do this? Do we write it down? Do we read it? Like, what do we do? And And
Yeah, it was an interesting time, and Chief Carr we both were put to the test on our messaging, and our mayor, and
yeah, I mean, not something you can train for. That's
No.
for sure. Not something
No.
that we saw coming. And then you also had George Floyd at the time. Mm-hmm. So tell me how that changed things a little bit for you
I hear music.
with some disco music in the back.
Hey, let's continue that after our ad break here that we have.
Oh,
Okay.
good.
Thanks for
Yeah,
88
perfect.
Crime. So we're going to move into our ad break. We'll be back shortly.
Thank you.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash. When you call in anonymously with the tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward. Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.
So as you can see, we are very pro first responder, fire, police, and military, and 88 Crime is a great organization to help facilitate some of those needs. So when we talk about the culture shift, so you dealt first with the pandemic, and then shortly thereafter we had the George Floyd stuff and the defund the police and a lot of the perception of your job. And how did you navigate that as the leader while still trying to keep people staying with you? Because I'd imagine there were a lot of folks that were like, I don't want to deal with this, and either quit or retired, and you had to keep that ship together, right?
Yeah, a couple of things come to mind as you bring back those incidents, and certainly it was the murder of George Floyd. It's not something that we shy away from in the discussion, because I think as police leaders during that time, we had to hear things we didn't want to hear about our profession, but we needed to. And so I think what I focused on was what occurred in another municipality does not just define our men and women at Oro Valley Police Department, or certainly anybody here in Pima County, in my opinion. I work with them daily. And so it was something that we focused on, the fact that still be proud of being your job, still represent the profession with ethics and integrity and nobility. And so it was just those reminders that I would have to do to the staff, because it was a very challenging time for our profession. It then led into some threats that occurred, those tough things that we had to address, all the while with the pandemic going on. And so, policing and crimes didn't stop during the pandemic. Yeah. So a lot of times we were having to, I called it pivot policing. We just didn't, with our motto of call a cop, you get a cop, right? So we would go in person to all calls. Well, then that had to change a little bit. And so we had to redefine the culture for a little bit to say, we're going to come still, but we're going to have to meet you outside. Or if you're okay with it, we'll take a phone call. We never went to online policing. We still haven't. That's not a choice that we want to do. Right. Our community has high expectations of us, as they should. And so that's important for us to maintain that relationship with the community, that face-to-face. And so but keep in mind, because of this invisible threat, and this is what I like to remind people about public safety, is that these men and women still came to work. And then they still brought that threat home, not only to themselves, but to their families. Yeah. Because it was just this unknown, invisible threat we were all addressing. There was no vaccine at the time. Whether you agree with it or not, these were the type of discussions that we had to deal with. And so part of it is really ensuring the police officers that we support you, and our community continued to stand by us. Our town management did, which was really critical. During a time when the world wasn't supporting us, they still did. And so these were the difficult parts that we had to address. And then in June, as you and I know, we came across this very large fire that nearly took out our communities.
Add that to the mix.
And so it was a really trying time. And, going to asking about stories about my career, I'll never forget the day that we had split the agency up into two. We wanted to pretend like we were firemen. And so we had 50% home, 50% at work, because we could never allow the community to see any difference in our policing,
Right.
if that makes sense. So we wanted to keep 50% home to try to keep them healthy and safe, and then 50% did calls for service, and then we would rotate like you all did.
Yeah, because you didn't want a wave of the virus to take down your entire workforce.
Right.
Yep.
And we knew it was coming, right? So these are the type of topics that we were trying to figure out and address. And so as the fire was consuming our mountain and certainly the Push Ridge area and potentially some structures, which we were 1/4 of a mile, as you know, from taking out structures, is we had to call in the team that was home to help with evacuations.
Okay.
And I remember being in my office myself and thinking, I don't know how I'm going to ask more of these men and women. I really don't.
Right.
And they can tell me no. And I walked into the room, and I remember looking at all of them with their masks on and thinking, I'm almost scared to sit here and ask you more. But yet, as I asked more of them, they never hesitated. They didn't say, Chief, you're crazy. We're not doing it. There's no way. It was simply a resounding yes. They went out and they served this community with heroism. And so it's those type of things that I look back upon and think that's why we do this job. And that's why it's important for us as leaders to support these men and women as we go through these things, because these are the most difficult times. And frankly, I would, submit to you that our history of our careers that we've faced, and we did it together as a team because we stuck together as a team, and we faced those unknown threats. And again, they then went home and addressed their families. And so part of it is really reassuring them that this is why we do it, because we're a field of service. And so that was one of the most memorable moments that I had as the police chief during that time.
Well, and doesn't that reinforce people that get into fire, police, military are truly the best humans that we have to offer. Every now and then you'll get a dirt bag, but for the most part, the call to service and the willing to do whatever it takes for the community, and with them not even batting an eye on like, hey, you need help, Chief, we got you. That is a testament to them and the type of people you try to hire, but also to you, because you had their trust. And I think it's different in some organizations if you're a real top-down leader, or you're just trying to impose your will, or you got the job because it was the next checkbox you wanted. People see through that. And that's another thing with first responders is they can sniff it out.
They're good at it, right?
Yeah. And so I want to give some props to you for that, because that is important, building that trust.
Yeah, they are. I wish people could see and hear what I see every day, because it's just amazing, and it's not just the police. We talk about the police a lot, but a lot of it is to the, dispatchers, right? The 911 operators. They're your first responders.
Great
and then
point.
you have all the records people who are doing all the behind the scene, administrative tasks, making you look really good.
Yes.
And
because you're not the most organized.
No,
We talked
I
about
am
that.
not the most organized. And then you have your administrative staff. I mean, it's your crime scene technicians. It's just everybody is working, our volunteers. They're different spokes that I talk about. In the center of that wheel is the word community. And each spoke. And so you must be able to foster that to be able to have the best agency and be able to serve the community.
Right.
So that's really what we focus on a lot, and to reassure them. These are
Right.
still trying times for them. And we've seen exodus of the profession. Recruiting and hiring, obviously, and retention is very difficult in today's time. I would submit to you, as I've said, that this is the most difficult time that I've ever seen. When I tested for police, there was 3,000 people.
Yeah.
For about maybe 10 positions, right? And now, you're lucky if you get 10 that show up for the PT test. And so it's just different times.
Yeah. And it's hard to overcome that. I think one of the things that Oro Valley Police has done a great job is you go on lots of different service calls. So you show up on like all the medical calls too. And it makes sense because you have people out in the field all over the place that know CPR.
Yeah.
And we've had quite a few people in the community saved because your folks will go out on that and they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
So
I had one last week. Marcos Garcia, he saved a man walking because he was first on scene. Because, as you know, the fire truck, right? So huge to get it there is a huge lift. Physics alone, where we're in a police
Right.
car, we can get there certainly faster. And the way we have our community structured with our beat assignments, it allows for a police officer to be in each side of the community, and it's a quicker response. And to your point, we do respond to all medical calls, which is, I would believe, is very rare in our industry. But I think part of it is that we must also keep our firefighters safe. And that's really important that we do focus on that. We've had some very serious incidents that occurred in the city and different municipalities where violence has occurred towards all first responders.
Right.
And so it is something that we do partner with Golder Ranch, primarily Golder. We have Northwest Fire too now, but yeah.
Well, and that allows the community to see your officers in a different light too,
Yes.
where it's not just because they're in trouble and
Right.
they got pulled over for something. They're seeing them not only on those medical calls, they're seeing them on lockouts, vehicle lockouts, in different community events where you have people, and you guys have a great social media presence too, where you're seeing the other side of things.
Yeah.
And that goes a long way.
I think it does. You have to humanize the badge, right?
Right.
And I think that's important. And we certainly talk about it from our media background, right? Of putting into that emotional bank account. And you keep fostering that relationship with your community, because when you do make a mistake, which we have and we will, that's the time that we make those withdrawals from the bank and basically say we made this mistake. And you have that honest communication with your community, which then allows you to just move forward through these different times that we've had to address.
Yeah, and I know from a first responder standpoint on the medical side, it's such a benefit to have a police officer on those scenes. I remember having 2 incidents that didn't go well because we didn't have a police officer right away. And we used to have this thing where the dispatcher would say, enter at your discretion. Well, that puts a captain in a tough position because your discretion is, I want to help these people. And obviously you want to keep your people safe, but then you can see the patient and you're looking around and you're like, okay, my discretion is we got this. And then you hop in, but you don't have a sheriff or a PD there. And then all of a sudden it can escalate and take a turn that you're not ready for. And so a couple of those went south for me. Luckily, nobody got hurt, but that's why there's such a benefit to having police and fire work together.
I think so. And when I first came to Oro Valley, I questioned it, right? I was new. I was from the airport. We didn't do that. And so when I came here, my very first call for service that involved a medical call that I went to ended up being a domestic violence call.
Exactly.
And so that's part of the reason why we've been able to prevent and witness maybe senior abuse, things like that we're able to really help. And that's why we go to those calls. And so that's really the focus on that. Now, obviously, during the pandemic, it had a different look.
Right.
And we had to be really careful with all of that. But, yeah.
So is it hard to get police officers that come like that lateral in from a different organization that aren't used to that? Is it hard to get them on board, or do you do a lot of vetting out so that they know what they're getting into?
Well, a couple of things. I find that this generation actually has a calling for service. So when you explain our philosophies, and I meet with each potential employee before we hire them.
Oh, nice.
And I go over the expectations of our community very clearly so that there is no surprise. So as they go in their career and they maybe say, geez, why are we going to this 5 years down the road? They can look back and go, no, this is why I remember, the chief saying this is why we go. And so that is something that I clearly define from the very beginning of their career. And I think that's been instrumental so that there's but what I have found is a lot of times people are wanting that passion to be able to kind of get back to basics of community policing.
Right.
And this really is the core of community policing.
Right. And so much of it is prevention related too. And
Yes.
like we said, establishing that relationship with the public so that they know the expectations and what's going to get them in trouble and how you sort through that. So you have this culture, and what I always like to brag about is, because I'm an Oro Valley resident, so and my kids will even joke with me and be like, safest town in America, right, Dad? Because I'm always saying that. I'm like, no, Oro Valley is the safest town in the United States. and I stand on that because I know you guys and I really appreciate that. But in this day and age, it's hard because you're not only competing, you're competing with other police organizations.
Yes.
And so how do you keep your folks so that we can maintain that safest status?
It's the challenge, right? Every day. So I think a couple things come to mind. These men and women work so tirelessly, and they take ownership into their response to police calls. So that's part of it. We are only one of the safest in Arizona because of their hard work that they do diligently every single day. My job is to really focus on the fact that, are they being paid competitively? I liken it, and maybe you're a sports guy, I liken it to policing nowadays. It's like a sports portal. Okay. So we're all gathering from the same group of people.
Right.
And we must be able to show that we are different in whatever way that may be, whether it's pay and compensation, culture, what the community support is, all those type of topics that I really focus on and promote and sell. Right. So it is important that we do. You can't ever take your foot off the gas. You're constantly having to look at what is the next latest thing that we need to focus on to ensure that we're providing that most competitive opportunity. A lot of it might be career opportunities of where special assignments can be. What's that look like? Those type of things that we're constantly trying to look at.
Yeah.
One thing that has been my passion, because after being in this field many, many years, and you have seen things and heard things that you cannot unsee or hear, is wellness of these men and women. Because I feel like if we put the resources towards that, it also allows them to then, if they're healthy and happy, they perform better. And so that's something that we have focused on as a cultural change over those last 4 years, and really focusing on wellness for them. Because, I can think of calls just this week that have been incredibly difficult for them to have to address. And I think that's where my heart breaks for them, because I know that we have, 25, 30 years of this buildup that occurs.
Right.
And so it's important that we address those issues.
So along those lines, is there anything that your folks are doing differently from that? Like, have you found a specific program? Have you found an approach that kind of works, that you've seen works really well for your people?
So part of it is confidentiality, right?
Sure.
So I think I can't give you numbers, right, and saying, hey, this is working. And I liken it to a grocery store of wellness. You pick what you want. Don't pick what you want.
Because people are in different places or stages of their
my generation, trauma. We're not talking about it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. Next generation, a little bit more. This current generation, they're okay addressing wellness, and they thrive on it, and I love it. I think it's great. I've had to evolve into that. So a couple of different approaches I've taken, and again, these are just things that we've come up with as a leadership team for Oro Valley PD, but it doesn't make it the perfect solution. It's just what we're trying, is a 4-prong approach to it. So we talk about confidential mental health, but we need to really get down to the honest conversation, is that they need to be trauma trained.
Okay.
Counselors.
Yeah, exactly.
They must be trauma trained. And that's
cool.
really something that we've had to focus on, because there's other assistance and resources, but they're not exposed to our profession.
Yeah, they can't relate.
And it has to be somebody that they feel comfortable with. We've had to look at virtual care during the pandemic, all of those different type of things. And I don't need to know who went and why I do care, but I don't need to know that information. And then we just pay the bill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really been a focus for us. We do talk about physical fitness as well and working out, and that's part of what we've been focusing on. We are looking at some incentives as well coming up this next fiscal year. And what's been exciting is the town as a whole now is really focusing on wellness, which I love. So that's something where it was the police, and now we're just expanding it to the entire town. So wellness is really, physical fitness is really important, especially in our profession, as you know. And so we want to make sure that we have people who live far past retirement.
Right.
And so our industry back in the day, I don't know what it is now, is we only average lived about 10 years upon retirement.
Right.
And so that's something that we are really focusing on, is getting past that with physical fitness. And then nutrition is part of it as well.
That gut health, because the gut to brain
is huge.
Yeah.
I have one of my officers, Matt Gall, very physically fit, always says, Chief, it's 70% nutrition, like as a reminder to me. So it's very kind for him to remind me. But anyway, so nutrition is super important. I don't want them going, to fast food on the, I'd rather them eat a healthier food choice. So we've partnered with the Hilton for using their employee cafe, which we very much value that partnership. And so that's something that we've partnered with. And then lastly, we do focus on really ensuring that they'll be financially set when they retire.
Right.
And so that's something that we focus on. When you're 21 entering this field, the last thing you're worrying about is money in retirement, So we want to make sure that we start preparing them for what that future is when they retire, because the 25 years goes fast.
Right.
You blink and here you are.
Well, and then if you're like me, you can retire really young.
Yes.
But now what are you going to do with health insurance?
Right.
Because coming back from Ecuador, it was funny. I had to write a check for my health insurance and just retired in January. So it's been like two months of health insurance. And I was like, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
That's the same price as like an annual salary of an Ecuadorian for the opportunity to pay your deductible. And getting in those, having that financial stresses are just as challenging as trauma and some of the other things.
Yeah. So it is something. It is important we address those topics. One of the new programs that we're bringing in following the leadership of Chief Chad Kazmar over at the Tucson Police is they have a program called Boulder Crest. So it's primarily has been focused in regards to militaries and first responders. And so that's a program that we're bringing to the agency. We started it in November. And so that's something I just attended it in February. And so it's really important that one of my philosophies is I'm never going to ask you to do something I won't do myself.
Right.
And so that's something that I really valued and got a lot out of the training. And so that's something that we're bringing to our agency as well.
Yeah, that's a great program. My wife and I attended that when we were in Montana on a leadership conference. And what I appreciated about it is you can have some open discussion because you talked about confidentiality. And I think that's where sometimes maybe it's the generation gap is because you have younger folks that are willing to talk about it and might say some dark stuff while they're thinking out loud. And an older generation is like, no, I remembered in my training that if somebody says something about suicide, we immediately straitjacket him and we put him through the system. And then sometimes it's hard to get out of that system. And you're like, you hear about an experience like that because I just had a friend go through that with a different organization, and it pushed him into retirement.
Sure.
Because it was like, here I was just trying to kind of talk about something, and I got sucked into the system as a result, as a healthy human being, and got a stigma on me because we can't just talk. And you have to be able to talk about deep stuff. And I think that's where Boulder Crest does a great job, is because you can be open and learn to talk about difficult things and not have it break you as a human.
Yeah, and their motto is struggle well. We all struggle. And that's something that is really important that we focus on, because each person, when you get to the point in your process, if you do talk about it, everybody has different struggles. And so I think that's really what they focus on, is that, what Fireman Robb is struggling with is going to be different than what I'm struggling with. And so I think it's important for us to keep that open mind and really realize that that's what's important, and that's what you're struggling with right now.
Yeah.
And it may not make sense to me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Because it's relative in the same way that losing power for an hour is devastating to your daughter.
She's going to kill me for telling that story.
But it also might have been quite the tragedy, relatively speaking. And if that's the first time the first time somebody sees a dead body or something, like, yeah, it might not be bad to a lot of people that have already gone through it, but that's the first time.
Sure.
That person's trying to process that. And so we can meet them where they're at in terms of their journey and still be able to support each other.
Right. And I think that's been really one of my growing, leadership that I've had to look at internally and really say, you have to keep a really open mind about these things. And it's not a secret at my staff that I wasn't a real fan of beards. But I had to evolve,
Yeah,
and,
I mean, you like mine now,
I do.
right?
I said it took you 2 months to grow it, but yeah.
But it was a good 2 months.
But, my selling point was the wives. The wives said, no, we won them. I said, okay.
Okay.
That was my selling point. So it was a topic.
And you're willing to listen.
Yeah.
And you're willing to adapt within reason, because I'm sure there's still other things that you're like, guys, I don't care. We're not doing that. We're not having crazy hat day on Fridays. It's just not what we're going to do.
Yeah. As I say, I've evolved, right?
Right. Well, if you're not willing to look at those things, it's hard to lead. And I'm sure some of your training as a kid on having to learn how to adapt to new situations, environments. That makes you more flexible.
And, as I tell my staff all the time, Kara Riley's way is not always the right way. And I don't want yes people. We need to have those people that will come in and say, Chief, you got that wrong. Or, you got that one right. Or what were you thinking? So I do a lot of that open dialogue with my staff and saying, hey, this is how I got there. Mm-hmm. This is what I was thinking. Tell me what you were thinking.
Yeah, that goes a long way, because I think especially during this day and age where it said like it's more complex than ever. A lot of inputs go in before you try and make a decision, but all people ever see is that decision. They go, "What was she thinking? How could that have been?" And to have an opportunity to explain yourself a little bit, or at least explain your thought process, even if you're not going to move from it, I think that goes a long way with your people in building the trust, because they're like, "Oh, okay, I don't agree with it, but I see how you got there."
Yeah. I think it is taking the time to explain the why. Mm-hmm. I think that's really critical. So that's something that I do focus on. And, I'm fortunate when you're the police chief, right? You have time to think about things and slow down versus when you're the sergeant, there's these tactical decisions you're making very quickly.
Yes.
And a lot of times there's not time to explain the why. We're just doing it. We got to move, So it is interesting to see the difference in dynamics with that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And based on those inputs at the time, in that moment, you make a judgment call. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're paying your people to do, is make that call, and I'll support you. We'll think about it afterwards. You can always dissect a better way to do something, but supporting people that are trying to do the right thing in the moment.
Yeah, I think, and as the leader, it's important to never forget where you came from either, right? Mm-hmm. So part of it is always asking, the body camera doesn't capture everything, and what exactly was going on at that moment, and what are the facts behind the scene that we didn't know about. And so those are the type of things that I don't want to ever be that judgment quickly. You just have to take time.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that after George Floyd, when everything was being body camera centric, that your folks would tip me off, because I'm usually that dummy that says what everybody's thinking out loud, and you're like, oh wait, this stuff is on. let's be careful.
We were the first in Pima County to have body cameras since 2012.
Wow, so that goes way back.
We've had them a long time. Yeah, a long time. So it's nothing new. They're very expensive with storage and redaction. We did see a significant increase in our requests for body cameras.
Because they knew you had.
Absolutely,
you probably had footage.
everything. Yeah. And yeah.
So they could see how dumb their spouse or partner actually was on that incident rather than just hearing their version of it. And that's a good thing that you get that objective view.
It is. Body cameras have been, really instrumental in, transparency for our community. It also has allowed for when an allegation comes in on a police officer or any other staff member, we're able to say, well, let's take a look at the body camera. And because it's just been in our culture ingrained for so many years, it's just nothing new.
Yeah.
So it's been it's been a great resource for us.
Good. Well, and speaking of new things, you've got budget season.
Yes.
Coming up, and I'm sure everybody's fighting for that slice of the pie. Is there anything new that you're trying to go for that you really need the support of the council and the community because you want to be able to get to, you don't want a bunch of people entering the portal to transfer out. You want to stay competitive, and any new programs or things that you're looking for?
I wouldn't say new. I'm fortunate. I always have been supported by the council and our town management.
Great.
So as we process through this, I also understand that I have to be a good steward with my partners because it's a whole town. So it's something that we work through together as a team, all the directors with the town. And we have an excellent leadership team with the town. So it's been really kind of an exciting journey for me to be able to partner with such amazing professionals in each section, and learning about the water department and parks and recs and why we need these things, and streets and roads, obviously, increase in healthcare, all these different dynamics that we partner with. And really in the end, we get there. So a big push, obviously, for me is always going to be competitive pay and compensation for our staff. That has to stay at the forefront. Of everything that I do daily is really pushing on that and whatever that looks like. So just partnering with, human resources and making sure we're getting there in the direction we need to.
Awesome. And so you're in that process right now.
I am. I'm fortunate.
But it's an ongoing discussion throughout the year. Yes, lots of
Never
meetings,
ends.
lots
Never,
of committees.
Yes, lots of committees, lots of meetings. So yeah, it's never ends.
I did want to remind the listeners we do have a chat in a couple of the Facebook live streams, and that if you're interested, go ahead and drop a question in there because Chief can handle it on the fly. And looks like we're getting some folks in that are appreciating the fact that we're humanizing the badge because when it's out of sight, out of mind, your only interaction with a police officer is when you've done something dumb.
Yeah.
Then it's hard to feel that rapport for your community, but it's an entire community commitment. If the taxpayers didn't want to support it, then you would have that issue of not being funded and lower morale and less officers on the street to help for CPR and those different things. So
absolutely.
Hey Scott, I've got a question.
Yeah.
For
David, you're in the booth. Can you? We can see him. There he is.
I see him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, how often does the body-worn camera close internal affair investigations in regards to complaints? Is it pretty often, or is it just every once in a great while you have something or somebody trying to go down that road?
Sure, and that's a great question. We actually, I wouldn't say they're internal affairs complaints. Normally it's going to be on attitude and demeanor through a traffic stop.
Gotcha.
And I would say probably maybe 80 to 90% of the time it does. It clears the situation or the officer. And we've gone so far as to actually ask the person who's complaining to come in. Let's watch it together if you choose to, or give them a copy. And sometimes they forget that we have them. And usually we can say, let me review the body camera footage. Sometimes that ends the conversation. But then on other times, it also allows them to see, oh, okay. Or, why did they cut the traffic stop so quickly, or what was this? But they didn't realize that we had a critical call going on in the background. So it's those type of things that we're able to articulate the whole story, if that makes sense. And so that's really what we try to focus on. So that's been important as well.
Well, thank you for that. That's great insight. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and David, I'm getting a little sounds like a delay on our stream or something. I can hear the stream.
Oh yeah,
there's-
you can hear me. I have it.
As long as that's just me and not going out to our people.
It's probably going out a little bit, but it's probably you're just hearing it from my mic, so I have the stream on in here.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
I apologize
Okay.
to the viewers and
How-
listeners.
It seems like we're looking good. Kara's looking good. The lighting is fantastic. So,
yeah, that's the goal, to make me look younger, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Is that sound gone now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
See the troubleshooting on the fly.
That's it.
Adaptability.
That's what we do.
So no plans to retire anytime soon then, sounds like. I mean, you've done 32
Yeah.
years and you loving it.
I love being a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
I started at $5.34 an hour, and I do it all over again. I absolutely love it.
Awesome.
But more importantly, now it's a little bit of a different perspective because I love representing these men and women that I get to work with daily and representing our community. And so we have a program, as you know, called the DROP, which is the Deferred Retirement Option Plan. And that kind of sets the roadmap of your end date, if that makes
Right.
sense. So
Yes.
I'm entitled to 6 more years of that. But that doesn't mean that that's the final part of it, right?
Sure.
So what we're really focusing on now through our budget requests is succession planning and training. And I hope some of them are listening, but my young leadership that is up and coming, they're so much better than we are. They're
Yes.
amazing human beings and great leaders. And so they haven't even realized their potential yet. So
Right.
that's exciting to sit back and watch and prepare them for that next chapter and taking over. And so I'm excited for the agency. And that's part of what I also tell new employees is that, we have a really great team, and it is my roadmap of leadership is what I call, because they help guide me throughout the day and all the different challenges that we come up with and into the night sometimes. But I think that they should also know that the culture of caring is going to continue throughout the next set of
Yes.
police leadership at the
100%.
agency. And so it's exciting to see that continue on, and really that history and that legacy will always be there of the culture that Oro Valley has. I really do focus on Oro Valley Police as a family. So it is something that we do really focus on.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think that if you have the right mindset, your goal is you should be able to leave and have it get nothing but better once you leave. It shouldn't
Absolutely.
be like, well, when I leave this place is going down. It's going to turn into Gotham City down here. And
No.
you want to be able to recognize that. And you've got great folks. I know it was easy for me to leave because the people taking my spots and coming up were better than me. So it's
Yeah.
like, great. Hey, I'll come do this and I will expand. I will do what I enjoy to do and keep supporting you guys. And you run the department because
Right.
you're amazing at it.
Yeah. And it is exciting. I think any leader who takes a position, one of the first things that you do is try to find out who's your next set
Yeah.
that's going to replace you. And so that's something that we're focusing on. We're bringing in some very large management training in August that is
Cool.
10 weeks long. I don't know that they're happy about it, but it'll be fine.
Did they get overtime for it?
Yeah, right. No, they're in command staff, no overtime, right?
Okay.
But they get to enjoy the. It's called Northwestern Police Staff and Command, and we're opening it up regionally to our
cool.
partners. And so it's one of the prestigious leadership courses, and it's kind of a box that needs to be checked for those that want to go on into police chief world. And so that's something that we're bringing in. And so that's exciting for us to bring in. We'll be sending 5 of our command staff members to that. And we have Lieutenant Carmen Treviso going to the FBI National Academy in the fall.
Awesome.
So that's exciting. So those are the type of things that we're getting ready for the next step. So
That's great. I think I'd be curious from your perspective when you leave. So when people leave Oro Valley Police and they retire, and you've had some cool Facebook posts of like dogs retiring from the K-9 unit, and then their handlers and all sorts. People love that stuff. As somebody that has retired, there is almost an immediate disconnect from that past profession.
yeah.
And is there anything that either you're doing or the union's doing to try to keep those retirees engaged so that they because the best part about it is the camaraderie and the culture, and And it's no knock on the people that are currently working, but you become out of sight, out of mind when you move to the retiree. So is there any systems
Certainly,
in place or anything?
It certainly is an area that we can do better. I will say that. One of the things that we started was we actually, and this sounds simple, but we started an email group so that they knew when promotions were occurring and retirements were occurring, because we didn't. It was kind of word of mouth, and it would be like, hey, by the way, did you know this person's, that kind of stuff.
Right.
So we've gathered that list, if that makes sense, so that we have the ability to pass that information on to our group. We are looking eventually to bringing Boulder Crest to our retirees as well.
Great.
That would be something I know that Chief Kazmar is looking at that as well, and actually already does a shorter, condensed version. I think it's 2 days. So it is important that we do continue to engage them because their knowledge is so invaluable.
Yes, exactly.
I was just at a leadership class giving the welcoming, and I had 22 of my young soon to be, sergeants and lead police officers all in one room. And I wanted to take the opportunity. And one of the sergeants that's in there, who's working right now, Sergeant Andy Lopez, I believe he has 37 years on. And I said, make sure you capture his knowledge. Take advantage of this knowledge because it's so invaluable. And Sergeant Dean Nesbitt was in there with, 27 years on, all those type of things. And I said, sit next to them, learn from them, hear what they have to say, because soon they're going to retire and then it's gone, to your point. And so that's really important that we capture that knowledge as much as we can.
Right.
So it is important.
Well, and that's really what I see our job here too at Search and Rescue is to have it be a hub for all of that stuff, whether it's prospective people that are interested in serving to use us as a resource, come and reach out because we can connect you with all of these people if it's fire, police, or military.
Yeah.
And to keep the retirees engaged also. So that three-pronged approach of how can we support the people doing it today, how the ones tomorrow and the ones that already did.
Right.
And we're not limited to the invisible boundaries of a fire district or just police or everything. So we can try to just be that community hub.
Yeah,
for
love
people.
it. Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity, much needed, I think, for our profession. As I say, in the world of media, we need to tell our story better.
Right.
And so when I am able to talk to one person or 500, I'll do it.
Right.
If my schedule allows it, I'm there. So
Yes.
I wanna be there because these men and women deserve it, and our profession deserves it.
Right. Well, and hopefully we got you out of a budget meeting to come in here this morning just to spend a little time. You'll get to do that afterwards.
That's after.
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's awesome. Well, we're right up about that hour. It's been awesome to be able to talk with you live and be able to, again, get the people to hear your story because I think it's so awesome, but also all of the things that you're doing at the Oro Valley community. And maybe we can try to do a regular thing where people can, once people get more comfortable and we've built this, I think they're a little shy right now to ask questions and to call because it can be
It's new.
intimidating
Yeah.
and new, but as we're building it, hopefully we serve as that hub for you guys to get the information out that you want whenever you want it. And you can hit us up anytime you want. And
we
sort that
appreciate
out.
it, and it's exciting for the program, and certainly you're always in our hearts as one of our favorites, as Fireman Robb. But also appreciate the opportunity to be able to tell the men and women's story from the Oro Valley Police Department, and certainly we're excited to partner with you all into the future. We have lots of events all the time, so
yeah, we'll help advertise those. And I want to make sure, did we leave anything out that you wanted to make sure that we do address on any of the information you need to get out to people or?
Well, we have a Coffee with a Cop coming up on Tuesday at Savaya Coffee House in Oro Valley from 8 to 10. And certainly that's an opportunity to meet your police officers. And, frankly, I want to take a moment to thank the men and women of the Oro Valley Police Department. Just even on the way here, I'm hearing them respond. And it's just humbling to be able to say I'm their police chief. They do amazing work every day in all aspects of the agency, and to thank our community. Their support means more to them, more to these men and women than they realize. And it's something we can never take for granted.
Yeah, no, and I don't think sometimes we get so busy that you don't get the time to say thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's so important, right? To just let them know they're appreciated and that you have their backs. And that's one of the marks of a great leader. And I know that I've personally benefited from being able to bounce things off you in the past. And when I've struggled with some things or been like, I don't know, do I really want to go this? And you've always offered great advice. So I really appreciate that because it's helped me develop and grow and see things from a different perspective. So I hope to be able to continue to use that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that when you're hearing the show and you're like, Fireman Robb, you popped off about that, and I don't know that was the best way to go, and I need to hear those perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Kara, thank you so much. To all of our live listeners, thank you so much for the first ever Search and Rescue Live. This is actually going to be on our site as episode 2.
Great.
Because we did put one in the can that hasn't been released yet because it wasn't live, but it was a Josh Herr guy.
Oh, great.
So Josh, for those that know Josh, he's now in Washington, and he's got a great podcast that we'll be advertising shortly. This one will be available right now. So you can listen back if you didn't get a chance, and we will continue to find more amazing leaders and get you, the listeners, to be able to ask questions and hear their perspectives. So thank you, Kara, so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
really appreciate
Good seeing
it.
you.
And we will see you all soon.